A 100-point gap can cost you $40,000. You never chose this number. It's judged you since 3 digits. 300 to 850. Decide approved or denied. Nobody explains how it's calculated. By design, almost nobody can. In 1956, the strangers decided how you'd look on paper. Their names: Bill Fair, an engineer, and Earl Isaac, a mathematician. No bank backed them. Just $800 and one idea. The idea: reduce loan risk to a single number. Banks laughed. Loan officers had judged by gut feeling for a century. It took them nearly 2 decades to earn the industry's trust. Today, that same math touches nearly every adult in this country. You've never read a line of it. You've lived inside its verdict. Fair and Isaac solved half the problem. The other half got stranger before their number. Banks made these calls anyway, without math. The way they made them is exactly why this number exists. Picture a bank office in the early 1960s. Before anything was online, getting a loan depended on one man's mood behind a desk. No appeal. No printed reason. Just a signature or a sinu. Study after study found the same pattern. Race, sex, zip code. Women were routinely denied credit, even with steady income. A woman's loan file often still needed a man's signature. Identical families, identical income, rejected at wildly different rates by race. This wasn't a rumor. It was documented and accepted as normal. A formula blind to race, sex, and name sounded like the fix, a number. They argued, couldn't hold a grudge. In 1974, Congress passed the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Algorithmic scoring wasn't just allowed. It was quietly encouraged. Now, a rejection could be defended with one line. The model said so. But nobody required the formula itself to ever be shown to you. One man's bias had a face. A formula's bias doesn't. That difference is why this gets stranger than discrimination. By the end, you'll see what those digits were really hiding. Here's what Fair Isaac has always admitted about the formula. Payment history, 35%. Amounts owed, 30%. Length of history, 15%. New credit and mix, 10 each. That's the entire explanation for 200 million people. The exact weights and thresholds, nowhere to be found. Fair Isaac has spent decades in court keeping it that way. It's a legal trade secret. Like a soda recipe. Reveal it. They argue, and people would game the system. So you're scored by rules you're forbidden to fully read. Same 5 categories. Same person. Scores 100 points apart. Even credit counselors admit they're often just guessing. Lawsuits. Congressional hearings. The formula still never came into the open. In 2003, bureaus finally let you request 1 free report a year. Your report, not your score. That number still cost extra. The fix for one man's bias became a formula with its own. But secrecy was only the surface. What came next was worse. For 3 decades, this scoring system stayed optional. In 1989, Fair Isaac gave it a name, the FICO Score, still optional. For 6 more years, barely anyone required it. Then in 1995, the mortgage giants changed the rule at once. Together, they backed almost half of all U.S. mortgages. That year, include the FICO Score, or we won't buy your loan. Not a law, no vote. Just a rule from 2 quiet giants. Within 2 years, it stopped being optional for almost every lender. A formula built for $800. Now, Gate kept the American dream. Auto loans followed. Credit cards followed. Even some landlords followed. By the 2000s, this number touched every major financial decision. Almost nobody affected by it was ever in that room. Not you. Not your parents. Not the clerk reading it off a screen. The old clerk is still there. He just works for the number now. The system didn't remove the middleman. It just gave him a boss. And upstairs, that boss made its biggest decision years earlier. Picture a conference room in Washington, sometime in 1995. No cameras yet. Just executives and a stack of risk reports. They'd watched lenders make wildly inconsistent decisions for years. One option: force every lender to use the same formula. This wasn't about fairness. It was about protecting two organizations. One consistent number was easier to insure, bundle, and sell. Someone signed a memo that would reach almost every household. Nobody debated what would happen. Two people the formula got wrong. That rarely happens in a room built to manage risk. Not people. The decision took less time than watching this video. Once signed, there was no undoing it. Every lender had to comply. Within months, every mortgage form asked for the same 3 digits. A number from 1956 was now mandatory for 200 million adults. Nobody asked how you'd feel renting your first apartment decades later. They weren't cruel. They were just reducing their own risk. Reducing their risk and being fair to you were never the same goal. That gap is where this stops being about the 90s and starts being about you. Today, this habit has spread far past mortgages. Most landlords now run the same score before handing you keys. In several states, insurers can still fold it into your premium. A cautious driver with a low score can pay more than a reckless one. In some states, employee can give a it. None of that was the plan in 1956. Once trusted for one decision, it gets tempting to trust every decision nearby. Not a conspiracy, just a shortcut, sitting there, unregulated. Nobody forced insurers or landlords. The number was already trusted. A system that expands without a vote rarely stops on its own. Now, the part you've probably never seen explained clearly. You can see your own score today. That much has changed. You still can't see exactly why it moved 10 points overnight. Bureaus give you the broad category, never the exact math. So you guess, the same way a loan officer once guessed about you. Except now, it's a machine, and it never explains itself back. Let's make this concrete. With one ordinary example. 2 people apply for the same mortgage. Same house, same week. One scores 760. The other scores 660. That 100-point gap means almost a full point higher interest. On a $300,000 loan, that's $60,000 extra dollars. Same house, same income. Decades of different cost. Neither did anything illegal to end up with a different score. One just missed one payment for years earlier during a rough month. That missed payment can sit on a report for 7 years. 7 years of higher rates, smaller limits, quiet rejections. Most never connect that payment to a worse rate than a coworker's. The formula doesn't explain the connection. It just applies it. Multiply this gap by 200 million adults, and it's staggering. Economists estimate this moves tens of billions a year between borrowers. Nobody collects that Minwin building with one name. It spreads so thin across lenders that nobody notices the pattern. So, who's responsible for a lifetime $60,000 gap? Fair Isaac profits every time a lender licenses the formula. Bureaus profit selling your data and selling you protection from it. Lenders profit shifting blame onto a number, not a human call. Every actor here is just following the incentive in front of them. Nobody designed this outcome in a single room. It assembled itself from separate decisions that each made local sense. That's what makes this so hard to be angry at directly. There's no office where you can demand your $60,000 back. The system just needs you to keep applying inside it. Here's the unsettling part. This loop isn't unique to credit scores. It's a mechanism every modern system already carries. Inside it, take a human decision, replace it with an opaque number. Scale it. That machine's job. Make accountability something nobody can point at. It doesn't care if the number is about credit, health, or an airport. It runs the same way whenever a decision loses its face. Here's the part with nothing to do with mortgages at all. You've checked this number for years without asking who benefits. Free score apps make real money selling you products it demands. That anxiety isn't a side effect. For some companies, it's the business. You check it like a lie detector, hoping for the answer you want. But no lie detector was ever allowed to hide its method from you. This one always was. Since the first version sold in 1956, the digits were never about risk. They let strangers judge you, unseen, the real invention. A polite way to say no, unexplained. Bill Fair died in 2016. Earl Isaac, decades earlier. Barely remembered. The 3 digits never stopped working. Long after they stopped explaining. You didn't lose fair judgment. It just moved to a room you weren't invited to. It moved there in 1956. Decades before you ever applied for anything. The number on your phone was never the whole truth. Now you can see the rest of it too. Not a comfortable ending. But finally, an honest one. For 70 years, this was sold to you as risk. It always measured something else. How easily a stranger could say no. If your mortgage number seems strange, wait until you hear about your rent. That number isn't calculated by 2 men anymore. It's software now. Welcome to the mechanism you've been paying monthly. Formula unseen.